He tossed the slide up like it was a game show reveal. My name, my title, and then, bold as a middle finger, $350,000. And that smug little smirk, that was the real headline. That's about 50% over market, he said, pacing like he'd just cracked Watergate. Anyone want to explain this dinosaur budget? Silence. A few nervous chuckles from people who used to thank me for saving million-dollar accounts on Christmas Eve. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, just closed my notebook like I was done jotting down the last words of a ghost town. By the way, if you're hooked already, and let's be honest, you are, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and tap the like. It helps us keep these stories rolling, and 97% of people forget to do it. We notice, and we appreciate the ones who don't. Now, back to this train wreck. The thing people never understood about me was I never needed to be loud to be essential. I wasn't the guy getting applause at all hands or dropping buzzwords like confetti. I was the one clients called when the platform broke on a Sunday morning and they were staring down a 7-figure SLA penalty. I was the reason those same clients renewed year after year, even when our pricing gave them heartburn. I'd been at Crestwell for 14 years, and I had longer-standing relationships than the damn brand itself. You don't just overpay people like that. You retain them. You protect them like crown jewels because when shit goes sideways, they're the ones who pick up the phone at 2 a.m. and fix what marketing promised but engineering forgot. But Cole Whitaker didn't get that. He was 32, fresh off the consultant circuit, full of teeth-whitened charm and startup slang. Said words like culture reset and synergy loops and thought charisma could replace trust. We weren't even 2 weeks into his tenure when he pulled that stunt in the leadership sink. I'd survived 3 CEOs before him. Never once did one of them have the balls or the stupidity to make war on the only person standing between them and a 40% churn rate. 14 years of stability doesn't happen by accident. You build it, quietly, deliberately. I'd onboarded more than half of our top-tier accounts personally. I knew their kids' names, their vacation schedules, their favorite whiskey. I never billed for that time, never asked for extra. I just showed up, every damn day. Through product failures, acquisition chaos, data breaches, all of it. My number was taped to more CFO monitors than I could count. And yeah, I made good money. But I earned every penny of it, every missed anniversary dinner, every flight rerouted through Minneapolis because some VP needed me on site yesterday, every time I covered for someone above me who had no idea how the platform actually worked. But none of that mattered when Cole decided I was too expensive for his slide deck. I sat there, still, while the oxygen left the room. Nobody spoke up. Not one person said, "Actually, Marcus is the reason we didn't lose Skybridge after the Q4 meltdown." Or, he's the one who talked Vivant Capital off the ledge when the renewals team misquoted them by $120K. Nothing. Just silence. I looked around the room. Most of them hadn't even been at the company 3 years. They didn't know the fire I'd walked through to keep the lights on. And the ones who did? They folded like card tables. So I stood up. Quietly. Packed my notebook, slipped my pen back in my jacket, walked out. No speeches, no rage, just precision. The funny thing is, they didn't realize that I didn't need Crestwell. Crestwell needed me. The clients didn't stay because of the brand or the tech or the quarterly webinars. They stayed because they trusted me, because I made them feel like someone on the inside gave a damn. And when you spend over a decade becoming someone's first call in a crisis, they don't forget your number just because a slick new CEO wants to trim some fat. I didn't drive home that day angry. I wasn't even sad. I just felt done. Like when you finish a book that's been dragging for too long and you finally close the cover and exhale. I got takeout. I sat on my porch. I watched the sun set behind my neighbor's busted fence. And then I opened my laptop and typed 3 names. Just 3. By Monday, I'd already signed with Everlink. And Cole? Well, Monday was the beginning of his education. Cole Whitaker came in like a TED Talk in human form. Trim navy suit, no tie, smile sharp enough to slice deli meat. First week on the job, and he was already dropping phrases like disrupting stagnation and bleeding edge client synergy. I'd heard the type before. Consultant DNA, fluent in Forbes jargon, allergic to listening. His handshake was firm, his eye contact was perfect, and every sentence out of his mouth sounded like it had been A/B tested for maximum LinkedIn virality. He didn't ask questions, he made statements. "This place is due for a reset," he said during his first all hands, pacing like a motivational speaker. "We've got legacy bloat, comfort culture, people who've been coasting for years." He paused just long enough to scan the crowd. "That ends now." No names, but I felt the spotlight flick toward me, or maybe I imagined it. Hard to tell with guys like Cole. They smear meaning all over the wall, let you decide if it's blood or paint. I kept quiet. I always did. Just sipped my bitter coffee and watched him perform. He loved performance, loved being the guy with the bold vision, the guy who asks the hard questions. I knew the type so well I could have written his damn speech myself. Cole had big plans, he said. Efficiency reviews, headcount rationalization, compensation realignment. Said it all like he was describing a spa package, not a payroll culling. And still, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was just green. Maybe he'd learn. Then I heard about the spreadsheet. It was a casual thing, almost whispered. Brenda in HR told someone in finance who let it slip over microwaved soup. Cole's been asking for comp data, everyone's, full breakdown. That got my attention. Now, I wasn't naive. Execs request that info all the time. But the way it spread, quiet, uncomfortable, nervous, it smelled wrong. Especially since he'd been on this optimization kick for days now, throwing out bar graphs and bell curves like confetti at a corporate funeral. And I knew damn well what was coming when a new CEO starts treating the people like numbers. He wanted to make a point, a splash, and I was going to be the cannonball. Cole never said anything directly to me in those early weeks. He was all smiles when we crossed paths. "Marcus, good to see you, man. Appreciate everything you've built here." That kind of fake sincere tone that makes your skin itch. But behind that polished grin, I could see it. The mental math. The silent assessment. Older, expensive, not flashy. Someone who doesn't worship dashboards or talk in KPIs. He thought I was the past. I didn't take it personally. Not really. I'd seen his kind flame out fast. Big ideas, no roots. Thought culture was something you could fix with ping pong tables and Slack emojis. Never understood that loyalty, real loyalty, doesn't come from vision decks. It comes from trust. From being the one who picks up the phone when the server goes down at 4 a.m. on a Sunday. Cole didn't value that. He valued optics, image. Everything he touched had to look modern, and I apparently did not. I didn't have the startup founder swagger. I didn't wear Allbirds or tweet about founder energy. I wore the same beat-up boots I'd worn for a decade, drove a paid-off Toyota, and gave a shit about client retention over click-through rates. I wasn't a dinosaur. I was a lighthouse. But Cole couldn't see that through his ring light. There was one moment, toward the end of his second week, when I saw it crystal clear. We were in a leadership stand-up, and he pulled out a slide titled Strategic Misalignments. It was vague. Intentionally so, but had phrases like legacy client entrenchment and account redundancy and budget outliers. Each bullet felt like a raised eyebrow pointed straight at me. When I asked for clarification, politely, mind you, he just smiled and said, "Oh, I'm just challenging our assumptions. No sacred cows, right?" No sacred cows. Just 14 years of relationships ready to be ground into hamburger for his performance metrics. I nodded, said nothing more. That's when I knew. I wasn't part of his plan. I was part of his demonstration. And I started thinking, really thinking, for the first time in years. Maybe this chapter was over. Maybe the quiet loyalty I'd built wasn't for them to keep. Maybe it was mine to take elsewhere. All he needed to do now was pull the trigger. Turns out, he already had the bullet chambered. The room smelled like burnt coffee and dying hope. Everybody crammed in, pretending not to dread what came next. Cole had called it a transparency session, which already sounded like a hostage negotiation wrapped in a TED Talk. He said it with a grin, of course. Always that grin. Like he was about to pull a rabbit out of his MBA. Before we dive into client churn trends, he said, flipping to the next slide, "I think it's time we had a grown-up conversation about resource allocation." Click. Up came a spreadsheet. Names, titles, salaries, equity, bonus structures. There was a beat of silence. You could hear someone's pen stop clicking. Someone else coughed like they'd swallowed a tack. And there it was. Line 3, bolded for effect. Marcus Hale, Director, Strategic Accounts, $350,000 total compensation. He waited just long enough for the tension to settle. then cocked his head and said, "Anyone want to explain this dinosaur budget?" A few people chuckled. Nervous, high-pitched, spineless laughs. The kind you hear at funerals when someone tries too hard to lighten the mood and just ends up desecrating the casket. I didn't laugh. I didn't move. He let the slide hang there like a guillotine in a glass office. I glanced at it, then glanced around the table. Not one of them, none, looked at me. Not Jared, not Lindsay, not even Laura, who once cried in my office after losing a client until I personally flew out and salvaged the entire relationship. They all stared at their laptops, pretending to read invisible emails. Cole went on, talking about right-sizing and market alignment. He used the word value density like it was a spell that would make my years of work disappear. Not once did he address me directly. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a case study, a punchline in his PowerPoint comedy special. I remember every detail of that moment. The way his sleeves were slightly too tight from that off-the-rack suit. The smug cadence in his voice as he explained how companies needed to be nimble. The heat crawling up the back of my neck, not from shame, but fury. Cold, surgical fury. I didn't interrupt. Didn't ask for the slide to be removed. Didn't defend the 14 years I spent holding that company's account base, together with sheer will and caffeine. Instead, I closed my notebook. Slow, deliberate, slid my pen into my coat pocket, and stood up. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. I think maybe one person muttered, "Marcus?" under their breath, like a ghost afraid of being noticed. I walked out of that conference room like I was leaving a dentist appointment. Calm, methodical, not even a door slam to mark my exit, just the soft click of hinges closing behind me. That's the thing about quiet people. When we go still, when we stop talking, it's already over. I took the stairs, not the elevator. Needed the movement. Needed gravity to remind me I was still real after being reduced to a damn budget line. In the parking garage, I sat in my car and stared straight ahead for what felt like an hour. Not thinking. Not even angry yet. Just blank. Then I drove home. No farewell email, no Slack goodbye, no HR complaint. What was the point? That room had made its choice. Cole had made his calculation. I was a dinosaur, an outlier, a walking inefficiency in loafers and loyalty. He wanted lean. He was about to find out what lean felt like when 40% of your pipeline stops picking up the phone. I didn't text anyone that night. Didn't check in on the QBR numbers or see what client fires were smoldering. Instead, I poured a bourbon, sat on the porch, and made 3 phone calls. 3. Didn't need more than that. And just like that, the countdown began. Saturday morning, I brewed coffee like it was any other weekend. Dark roast, 2 sugars, 1 sip before I opened my laptop. No rage, no seething diary entry, no group chat catharsis. Just the familiar click of keys and the slow, quiet start of a new strategy. I didn't call HR. What were they going to do? Dock his bonus for public humiliation? Issue a training module about respecting legacy talent? Please. HR at that level is just legal in better outfits. I'd seen too much to expect anything else. And honestly, I didn't want their apology. I wanted momentum. So I scrolled through my phone, not frantically, not like some freshly dumped teenager. I went straight to the folder I'd named Rainy Day. 3 names, old contacts, former competitors turned reluctant allies, people who'd been across the table, fighting for the same clients, drinking the same terrible hotel lobby coffee at vendor expos. First call, Angela Voss, VP of Client Experience at Everlink. She picked up on the second ring. "Marcus? Angela, you got a minute?" A pause, then a quiet laugh. "I was hoping you'd call." Second call, Gil from PolarisNet. No answer. I didn't leave a voicemail. Third call, Neha Chowdhury, now Chief Growth Officer at Cadence Point, still had me saved in her phone. "Tell me you're free," she said before I could even say hello. I smiled. We talked for 10 minutes, each. I didn't beg, didn't pitch, just said the truth. I'm making a change. By Saturday night, I had 3 calendars pinging me for Monday availability, but one offer came in Sunday evening, before I'd even sent over a resume. Everlink, full comp match, plus equity. Title, Executive Director, Strategic Transitions. But it was the subline in the offer packet that made me pause. High Value Capture Strategy, Lead Architect. That wasn't a job title, that was a blueprint. They didn't want me to just come in and manage accounts. They wanted me to build the framework that would absorb Crestwell's bleeding clients. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. Outside, the sun was setting, throwing amber light across my porch railing. My phone buzzed with a follow-up from Angela. We move fast for people who've already done the work. Monday morning, I shaved. Wore a new shirt, no fanfare, no announcement. Just stepped into Everlink's glass building like I'd always belonged there. The onboarding was seamless. Desk already set up. Badge ready. IT had my email live within an hour. They assigned me a chief of staff, a dotted line analyst, and a dotted line from the VP of legal. I didn't ask for any of it. They just knew. My job? Simple. Create the net. Catch the clients Cole was about to drop. I wasn't angry. I wasn't smug. I wasn't anything really. Just steady. There was no need to gloat. No point proving a thing. That was Cole's game, and I wasn't in it anymore. Let him count dashboards. Let him sort people into buckets labeled cost centers and synergies. I was building something better, not out of spite, but because I could. Because I knew where every weak point at Cresswell lived. Because I'd spent 14 years patching holes no one else saw. And now? Now I was free to let them widen. By 10:42 a.m. Monday, I had my badge, my coffee, and a front row seat to the slow bleed that Cole never saw coming. Everlink's VP of sales knocked once on my open door, then slipped in holding a printout like it might burn him. Just came through, he said. Your name's not on it officially, but... Well, he handed it to me, smiled tight, and walked out. 9 client termination notices. 9, all from Crestwell. All from accounts I'd personally onboarded, rescued, or resuscitated from the brink over the last decade. 3 of them were on annual contracts, with penalties. They were still willing to eat the cost just to get away. That's not churn. That's exodus. I didn't smile. I didn't fist pump or lean back with some smug, cinematic exhale. I just read each line slowly. I recognized every signature. CFOs, heads of procurement, even 2 CEOs I'd met in person at their board retreats. I remembered their stories, their concerns, their kids' names. I was never trying to collect leverage. I was just trying to be human in a world allergic to it. And now, that humanity had come home with interest. One cancellation email included a short line, "We're pursuing an alternative vendor relationship." I knew what that meant. They were already on the phone with Angela's team. We didn't poach, didn't send mass mailers or whisper sweet discounts in inboxes. They came because trust doesn't die when employment changes. It follows. Meanwhile, across town, Cole probably had no idea, or worse, he had an idea and thought it was controllable. That was the most dangerous kind of ego, the kind that could talk itself into thinking gravity was optional. By lunch, I'd received 2 internal memos about inbound interest from former Crestwell clients. Angela flagged them as Marcus-initiated trust paths. I told her I hadn't called a single person. She just nodded. You didn't have to. Back at Crestwell, Cole, by all reports, brushed it off during his Monday stand-up. These were low-fit legacy accounts, he told the team. They were already mismatched with our new value alignment model. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. That's what happens when your head's so far up your own forecast model. You can't feel the ground shift. Those low-fit clients, they made up 22% of their enterprise revenue. And I knew, because I built it, that their onboarding model was still dependent on the materials I wrote. I literally wrote the vendor flow that taught new account reps how to manage escalations, how to loop in legal, how to balance net terms without souring the relationship. They kept using my frameworks after I left. I recognized them in the screenshots clients forwarded to us. I wasn't going to say a word. This wasn't war. This was weather. You don't argue with the tide. You watch it move. Everlink's CEO sent me a short note after the 3rd client committed. Whatever you're doing, keep not doing it. I replied with a single line, loyalty is rarely loud. That afternoon, I had my first strategy sync with legal and sales enablement. My role wasn't about scooping up clients, it was about preparing for them, creating smoother onboarding, rewriting the vendor-facing logic to accommodate fast-track requests without overextending ops. Everything I'd done before, but with more clarity, more backing, and none of the politics. I ended the day walking the sales floor. Quiet nods, A few curious looks. No applause, no welcome parade, just the look professionals give each other when they know they're standing next to the calm before a storm. And somewhere over in Cole's glass-walled conference room, someone was probably putting together a new slide deck. Too late. The slides weren't the problem. It was the silence that came after them. The first call came Tuesday at 9:14 a.m. Marcus, this is Daniela from Breyer Partners. We're done, okay? I don't trust a single person over there anymore. Cole's team is green and rude, and nobody knows the difference between a service credit and a refund. Can we move? I didn't say yes, didn't say no, just said, I'll connect you with our legal intake. They'll walk you through the conflict check and onboarding protocol. Then I forwarded her to Everlink Legal and got back to my notes. Ghost protocol. No trace, no trail. I didn't solicit. I didn't suggest. I didn't even use words like transfer or exit. I just stayed still while the flood came to me. By Wednesday, 6 more had reached out. Some sent DMs on LinkedIn. Some emailed my old Gmail with subject lines like Marcus, urgent, or need to talk. I kept my replies clinical, cold, no warmth, no nostalgia, no gloating, because this wasn't a reunion tour. It was a realignment. Cole's people must have noticed the silence because by Thursday, I got a ping from someone at Everlink's ops desk. Cresswell sent us a cease and desist draft. Says we're engaged in targeted interference. I didn't even flinch. Angela called me into her office, shut the door. Did you reach out to anyone directly? No. Did you talk to any of them before you left? No. She studied me for a second, then laughed quietly. God, they're panicking. And they were. Inside Crestwell, Cole had apparently called an emergency sync with sales and legal, demanded names, wanted to know who was leaking to me. He stormed through Slack threads like he was hunting state secrets, flagged emails, audited call logs, started putting pressure on client success managers, asking why certain accounts were showing drift. They couldn't tell him, because they didn't know, because the only thing leaving those accounts was trust, and that's not something you can track in Salesforce. Meanwhile, I sat in a conference room at Everlink with my sleeves rolled up, sketching out a new retention map for high-conversion enterprise clients. The playbook I was building was clean, lean, and completely mine, not a copy, not a clone. A new model, shaped by what I knew they were about to lose and what we were about to gain. Still, I had one tab open on my screen almost all week, a PDF. Crestwell's Client Success Infrastructure, Internal Playbook, version 2.4 authored by Marcus Hale. Last modified 8 months ago. Still live in their shared drive, still unprotected, still using the templates I designed. Funnel triage, sentiment drift detection, enterprise health metrics, escalation hierarchy. I knew their sequence better than the people now tasked with following it. Knew the pressure points, the response delays, the exact moment a client would stop feeling heard and start shopping. And Cole? He was too busy flexing in town halls and trying to turn turnover into performance art. One of the clients that reached out Friday sent a simple message. Crestwell lost the thread. You were the thread. I didn't reply. Just forwarded it to Angela and archived it. Let them twist. Let Cole panic and stomp and throw his little strategy tantrums. I wasn't poaching. I was standing still, and they were handing me the keys. By the end of the second week, the drop hit 28.6%. That's not a wobble. That's a nosedive. Cresswell's quarterly numbers hadn't even gone public yet, but panic doesn't wait for earnings calls. It starts in private Slack threads, escalates in war rooms, and bursts open in board meetings disguised as operational recalibrations. Someone inside leaked it to an old friend of mine in sales ops. I didn't ask them to, didn't hint at it. People just talk when there's blood in the water and no one's steering the boat. The internal subject line? Emergency, Revenue Integrity Roundtable, attendance mandatory. Cole sat at the head of the glass-walled conference room like he still had control of anything. Rumor had it he didn't even prep a proper deck, just walked in with 3 people behind him, a whiteboard marker, and a chip on his shoulder big enough to crack the damn table. He opened by blaming churn velocity on legacy client inertia, then pivoted to sales. The reps have been too passive in upselling and cross-promoting. They've grown dependent on auto-renewals. Then to customer success. They don't own retention outcomes. They babysit accounts instead of building value. Then This is my favorite. He hit product. Said the roadmap lacked gravitas. That was the word. Gravitas. Like feature velocity was supposed to stop a mass client walkout. He kept deflecting, kept painting every missed renewal as someone else's failure to align with modern delivery principles. Until someone, probably Marty Chen, the only board member with actual enterprise experience, cut in and asked a simple question. What changed in the last 3 weeks? Cole fumbled, talked about market headwinds, contractual fatigue, platform parity across the vertical. Buzzwords melting into each other like alphabet soup over a flame. That's when someone, again, Marty, I'd bet my pension, said it. What about Marcus Hale? Silence. You could have heard a notification ping on mute. Cole snapped, not yelling but sharp enough to draw blood. Marcus was dead weight, he said. He built relationships, sure, but he couldn't scale them. We were carrying a bloated line item for loyalty that wasn't producing pipeline. A pause. Then another board member, not tech, someone from private equity, leaned forward and said flatly, dead weight doesn't walk off with 40 clients. Cole didn't have a comeback for that, because there wasn't one. That room shifted, quietly, permanently. The board didn't fire him that day, but they stopped defending him. That was enough. The spell was broken. The golden boy glow dimmed. You could practically see the calculations forming, contingency plans, exit packages, internal candidates worth grooming. Once a CEO is explainable in past tense, it's only a matter of time. Back at Everlink, we onboarded 4 new clients that week. All enterprise, all from Crestwell's low-fit legacy list. Each one came preloaded with trust. No bells, no discounts, no begging. Just a quiet return to where they'd always felt safe. Angela passed me in the hall Thursday afternoon, coffee in hand, smirk twitching at the corner of her mouth. You hear about the board meeting? I nodded once. Anything you want to say about it? I shook my head. Nope. Because what was there to say? I wasn't there, and I was still winning. The article dropped on a Wednesday. No warning, no tip-off. Just a soft ping on my phone at 7:12 a.m., followed by 6 texts from people who never text this early unless someone's been arrested or promoted. Crestwell bleeding clients after exec ouster, the headline read. Below it, a grinning headshot of Cole from one of those overlit PR shoots. Sleeves rolled, arms crossed, chin tilted like he'd just solved corporate America. The piece wasn't savage, it was worse. Clinical. Methodical, pulled from investor reports, leaked internal memos, and anonymous employee quotes that might as well have been signed in Sharpie. Phrases like strategic misalignment, trust collapse, and client drift cascade littered the paragraphs like shrapnel. It didn't mention me by name, but I was there, in the negative space, in every sentence about legacy accounts disappearing overnight, in every quote that alluded to veteran leadership exits and knowledge gaps in client handoffs. Everlink's stock ticked up 2.7% by close of market. I didn't comment, not to the journalist, not on LinkedIn, not even to Angela, who just slid the article across my desk later that morning with a raised brow and said, "You sure you don't want to frame this?" I shrugged. Let the market do the talking. The real headline, for me, came 3 days later in the form of a quiet dinner, round table, private room, no press, no noise. It was just me, Everlink's CEO, and 3 former Crestwell clients. The kind of dinner you don't post about because the deals being toasted were already signed. No handshakes needed, just presence. We talked shop, trends, hiring. One of them asked if I thought AI would ever replace real account managers. I said, only when it can remember a client's dog's birthday and troubleshoot a product rollout in the same phone call. Everyone laughed, but they knew I wasn't really joking. Toward the end of the meal, the CEO raised her glass. To Marcus, she said, the man who didn't have to fight, just walk. The others followed. No speeches, just a quiet clink of glasses and a nod. I didn't smile. I didn't preen. Just raised my glass and sipped, because it wasn't a victory lap. It was just the moment where the ground finally caught up to the choice I'd already made. After the dinner, I checked my calendar for the next morning. Onboarding sync with 2 new hires. Names I knew by heart, Lucia Reyes and Brandon Feld. 2 of my best client success leads from Crestwell. I hadn't recruited them. Hadn't made any promises, just left the door open. They walked through it on their own. Angela joked, "You building your old team back?" "No," I said. "Building a better one, this time with leadership that gets it." Because that was the real change, not the titles, not the logo on the slide decks, but who held the thread, who remembered that loyalty isn't a line item, it's a lifeline, and I was holding it now, quietly, firmly, no fanfare, no flair, just the thread. 2 weeks to the day after I walked out of that glass box of a conference room, Cresswell held its quarterly business review. The numbers didn't just sag, they cratered, down 39% in enterprise revenue. 39. I didn't watch it live, didn't need to. The numbers spoke louder than I ever could. But someone sent me the recording. You know how these things go. Someone's always screen capturing the slow motion implosion for posterity. Cole walked in like he still believed he had control over the narrative. Khakis, white button-up, no tie, sleeves up like he was getting hands-on. He kicked off the QBR with the same showman energy he always carried, talking about seasonal repositioning and emerging efficiencies in client segmentation. A few heads nodded, most didn't. The deck was fluff, the graphs were red, and somewhere between slide 6 and slide 7, one of the clients watching, VP of Procurement at Halberd Systems, unmuted. Not a question, just a statement. "You called Marcus overpaid, but he was the only reason we stayed." The silence that followed was surgical. Cole stammered something about rebalancing the client experience model, but it didn't land. It didn't even crawl. That one sentence had taken all the air out of the room and replaced it with truth. Nobody defended him. Nobody had anything left to offer, because once someone says the part everyone's been avoiding out loud, there's no going back to the script. By Friday, word slipped out. Cole was transitioned out. No press release, no announcement, just a quiet change in title on the internal org chart. His LinkedIn went dark that night. I didn't celebrate, didn't call anyone, didn't send champagne or petty texts or snarky DMs. I just walked into Everlink's all-hands meeting, pulled up my one assigned slide, and clicked. White background, black text. No bullet points, just 10 words. Loyalty isn't in the contract, it's in how you treat people before they leave. The room went still, then soft nods. Someone in the back whispered, "Damn." I said nothing. Closed the laptop, sat down. That was it. No revenge speech, no "I told you so." Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that every assumption Cole made, that I was too old, too expensive, too legacy, was wrong. And now the board knew it. The clients knew it. Everyone did. And me? I was already working on a retention blueprint that would make our Q3 numbers bulletproof. Someone once asked me, back when things first started unraveling, was it worth it, staying that long? I used to say yes. Now I say this. Turns out $350K was a discount.